What's up, everybody? On this episode of the Boston Ski Party, we are joined by Dan Egan. Dan is a world-renowned skier and pioneer of the sport. So,
feels good.
Before we started recording, we were out there just talking. Now, we're doing a little bit of Ski Monster history for you because we're just chopping it up. And you had mentioned, because I think it's really interesting, but like we're talking about the Boston ski landscape and retail in general, in this area, and like how kind of crazy it went from essentially being like this mega place with all these stores, and specifically to what you said, like this like ski market kind of stronghold, right? Yeah. And how everyone in our business, like for the most part, it feels like has some connection to that. And then you were like, I worked there when I was 14.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
And then going from being 14-year-old working in, you said Braintree, the Braintree location,
Braintree, yeah.
and then you're doing all their Win stuff, right?
Yeah.
And it's like so many people that we just converse with at brands or whatever, like have like this weird, like, you talk to them about ski market and they're like, I worked at the one in Nashua or on the South Shore or Comm Ave, and you're like, man, it's crazy. All these years have gone by, and still people have ski market stories.
Oh, I mean, it's legendary. My whole book's about that network and how that network supported my entire career. Mm-hmm. When I was 14 and went to all those clinics, because I could drink beer, right? That's why I went, right?
A couple slices of cheese pizza, a couple of PBRs.
Yeah. And, learn about equipment. But those reps went on to be marketing directors, sales directors. Mm-hmm. By the time I make my first video, they're like, yeah, Boston boy, go.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it went.
Yeah. I mean, similarly, when you're asking us, just like a quick, like, hey man, like this, this is a cool location. Like, and you start to backpedal a little bit. It's like, yeah, similar. I was 19 in college at the time, like same kind of deal. Like you're at a ski shop, you're like, oh, this is my job. People show up with food and like you're drinking beers, talking product. You're like, man, we should keep this going. Like this is pretty cool. Like I don't want to get a regular job. Like I want to talk about ski boots and like have some guy just bring me free beers.
Exactly.
You're gonna pay me to do this?
Exactly.
Which is really sweet. And then we started again. At the sake of repeating myself, but we started Ski Monster before, Ski Monster Boston, which you were asking about. And I was like, yeah, we basically made a deal to start selling equipment on the internet with a retail partner that we had at the time. And we were going to kind of balance both things. And that's kind of how skimonster.com was born. And to your rebuttal, you dropped some knowledge on me, which I didn't know, which was you started the first online retailer.
The first online retailer. We were skiershop.com, and we put all of Woody's inventory online at Ken Jones. Mm-hmm. And my first client was Stuart Rempel from K2.
Okay.
I get this email. Hey, I want to buy 100 pairs of K2.
Oh, jeez.
Egan, call me, right? And I'm like, oh, shit, Stuart Rempel, right? And I call him. He's like, how the hell did you get my product online? Because back then nobody was doing it. It was still everybody talking brick and mortar. It was revolution. Like this was way out there. And I'm like, well, it's you sold it to Woody Jones. We have it, and we're just Ken Jones online.
Yeah.
And he was like, what? And it was an issue. It was an issue. But that's where we broke through, and I'm sure you did with other brands. Stokely and some of the smaller brands loved it. And eventually, Skier Shop would go on to have its own location in Stowe.
Right.
And that's a whole nother story. But, that was all my relationships that started that company and laid out the whole online thing. When those guys originally called me, they wanted to do a coffee shop and a ski shop. I said, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Probably would have been better, but... I said, no, man, we should go online. There's this new thing, the internet. That's
going to work.
It's going to work. That was like 1997, 98.
Wow.
I bet we were online by 2000.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's early on.
Yeah. And then Evo started, Backcountry started, and John Sawartzky started. He had, I can't remember the name of his shop, but yeah, there was some competition after us that came fairly quick. And then, what they did at Evo really showed everybody they were able to talk, I think, more than anybody else, the industry on to going online.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a lot of ins and outs to that for sure. But they definitely did. Yeah. They did a great job with that. We have a similar story, to have someone calling you and being like, how the hell did you get that?
Yeah.
So we were at our first retail partnership at the time, and I got my phone rang, and at the time George and I had it was a Skype number. So like you went to Ski Monster, and you're like, it looks, they could give us a call, and so the Skype number would forward it to our cell phones, and if both of our cell phones rang, and at the time you weren't getting these robocalls, so if it was a number you didn't know, you're like, oh, it's a Ski Monster call. So you'd answer, you're like, hello, Ski Monster, and I'm just like in my room, like in my apartment, So it sounds so stupid, but like that's what we did. And so I answered it, and some guy was like, you sell Vocal skis? And I'm like, yeah, what are you looking for? And George is originally from Minnesota, and so we incorporated the company in Minnesota. We had lived there for a year before we came back. So our address and everything was based out of Minnesota. So the guy's like, he's like, how the hell do you have Vocal skis? I'm like, oh, what do you mean? Like we buy Vocal skis from the vendor and we sell them on the internet. He's like, well, I'm the Vocal skis rep out of the Midwest, and you're based in Minnesota, and I didn't fucking sell you shit. And I'm like, oh,
I want my commission.
Right. Like, and he's at the time, you're like, okay, zippy doo dah, like bye.
Wrong number.
Yeah. And then I remember vividly because I ran out of my room, and George and I were roommates at the time. We lived together for an uncomfortable amount of time, and so I ran out of my room, and the phone rang again. It was him. And I see George, he's like, did you answer? I'm like, don't answer it. Don't answer the phone. He's like, what is it? I'm like, it's a Ski Monster call, but it's the Midwest rep from Vocal, and
he mad.
I don't know what we're supposed to say. And he's like, yeah, I don't know what we do say, And I'm like, I don't need. So a similar story.
Yeah.
Like, how the hell are you getting that? Because I didn't sell it to you,
Yeah.
And that was pre like kind of Wild Westy stuff, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
we were essentially just made a deal with a retailer, to sell the Vocal skis.
I mean, when you think of Ski Market being the biggest retailer in the country with 21 locations and basically no website.
Right.
Like that was unbelievable.
Crazy.
Like crazy.
Yep.
And really, no interest in this at all. Like they were so loyal to the industry that they missed the tidal wave that was coming to their own detriment.
Yeah.
And if anybody could have done it, it would have been the Ski Market. They had all the relationships, they had all the leverage, they had the biggest open to buy, and they were blind to it, like to a fault.
Yeah.
I mean, we have talked about that internally a lot over the years. Just the void that company going away has left in this particular part of the country for ski retail, number one. And obviously the second thing, to your point, we've always been like, not only did they already had all the infrastructure, they had all the buyers in place, they had all the relationships with the vendors, right?
Warehouses.
They had the warehouse. They had the Boston Ski Show, which at the time was humming, right? Huge show. And it's like all they had to do was just invest in making a really awesome online shopping experience. And I don't want to say Ski Monster wouldn't be here, but it would have been a hell of a lot harder for us to be in the Boston marketplace if they would have done that.
And when you think about that entrenched thinking, like you have to worry about that every day in your own business, because that's a great example of entrenched thinking and how people who were experts and the best in the business were a victim of their own entrenched thinking.
Yep.
And I see that in so many places in the ski industry. This is how we do it. This is the way it's done. And when you start to think about entrenched thinking and how it traps you into your own thoughts and your own ways, it's a constant battle in business.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and you see it across all industries. But I mean, in our little world, I'm getting older now. I'm 38 this week, so I feel older. Yeah, thank you.
Oh my God.
But I feel like when I first started, like you did too. Like you're a young guy. And it's like all these retailers are aging out, and George and I are like 23, 24, 25. And you see how all these people kind of like do it, and it's the same, and it's like the same way of thinking, and you're like, man, like if we could just do it a little bit better, or if we could just work a little bit harder, or just change the way ski retail is looked at, and then we come up with this, and you're like, yeah, you can do it if you just get out of your own way a little bit,
Yeah. It takes a while to turn the tide.
It takes a little while.
It takes a while to get the consumer. But these days, I think the consumer really is more than ever open to this because of the way they shop.
Yep.
Everything's by appointment. So it makes sense that you would be retail by appointment, and it almost makes it a better experience.
Right.
And it for a sales target for you, I imagine, what's the percentage do you have on closing those appointments?
Like 99%.
That's sick.
Yep.
You wouldn't have that on an open Saturday. No.
Well, no. And, again, like we were talking about earlier, it's like the biggest thing for us was qualifying people. And we worked ski retail our whole adult lives at this point, and we did it before appointment only, right? And the biggest thing is like You have to be available to make a sale, but you also have to qualify the customer on like what that sale is going to be, right? If 10 people walk in at the same time, you have no idea what they want to look for. Right. Now, you know exactly what they're here for. You know, it's like, hey, Dan, I'm Eric. Nice to meet you. So you're here for some new skis today. What, you know,
Yeah.
like what's the reason for new skis?
For the family.
Right, exactly. Versus like you walk in and it's like, can I give you a hand with something when you shop? And you're like, we're just looking.
Yeah.
And then now I'm lurking on you like Bob's Discount Furniture. Like,
Right.
is he gonna need some help? Is he not gonna need some help? So it changes the whole dynamic.
Yeah.
To in my particular opinion, I think most that it's just better customer experience.
Absolutely.
Speaking of selling skis, you ski on Alans, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, because Garrett was saying that, and I think we were talking to Fresco this past year, and he's like,
Nice.
Dan Egan still skiing Alans.
Yeah. They keep me around the old timer. You know, that's somebody says, hey, you're not on the website. I'm like, dude, I'm 60. They don't put 6-year-old
There's a website?
former extreme skiers on their websites.
Well,
you know?
only one.
Yeah, well, just Blake.
Right.
But I mean, he's another deal, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it's a different stratosphere, and
Yeah.
Glenn's awesome. But you have to, as an aging athlete, and at this point, it's even funny to say that because I'm that old. Those things happen, And what's really been interesting for me is my career's been so long that so many of these kids in the industry, they have no idea.
Yeah.
Like, will you send me your competition schedule? I'm like, bro, like, no. What's your Insta? I'm like, no. You're like, it's another thing what I'm doing. Right. And it looks, it's just not what's happening out there for their normal conversation. So it's been interesting to survive that.
Yeah.
In particularly in manufacturing and in the resort side.
Yeah. What have they been sending you? Like, what have you been skiing on?
Well, I love, the Ripstick's awesome. I have a whole quiver of that. And, I keep a whole full set in Europe, full set in Montana, full set here in the East. And I just travel to wherever my skis are.
That's
so, the 116s, I only keep those in Europe because that's where you need the space to let that thing
Is that
fly.
why it didn't snow there this year? 'Cause
Well,
you had the 116s
I was
over there?
telling Garrett, anybody who did, they went to the wrong spots. We had great snow, but in all of April it snowed.
Okay. Where are you in Europe when you go there?
Val d'Isère
Okay.
mainly, yeah.
Yep.
How many days in Europe did you get this
I
winter?
was 9 weeks in Europe.
Holy smokes.
yeah,
weeks.
yeah. That's a lot of espresso.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Forgot you don't count the days.
Yeah, I don't count the days, just the weeks.
The weeks.
Just the weeks.
Have you, and maybe you had a long time ago, I'm not sure, but because we just had a good experience there because we were just there. But have you been to the Elan setup HQ? The factory?
I was in Slovenia when it was Yugoslavia.
Okay.
So we were filming for Warren in 1991 in Yugoslavia. It was about 60 days before the Civil War was going to break out.
Mm.
And we were skiing with a member of the Yugoslavian demo team. And he took us to the factory. And we saw the first ever shape ski. It was the SEX, right?
Yeah.
And we had never seen anything like it. And, it was like a really big spatula, right? It was crazy shaped. And of course, being cocky kids, we laughed.
Right.
We're like, yeah, maybe in Yugoslavia. It's never
That's
gonna,
never gonna work.
It's never going to catch on,
Yeah.
But again, entrenched thinking, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then, boom, I was just interviewing Les Otten for my own podcast recently. And he talked about, taking that ski and how they taught differently on that ski. And they went from ski teaching to ski coaching. And the whole experience of having a coach and a demo center, and that changed everybody's world.
Yeah.
And literally, in my first book, All Terrain Skiing, I don't mention shape skis. Like, talk about blowing it, right? It was like the biggest thing in the market the day my book hit. And it was like, yeah, I missed that train.
It's never going to work.
Completely, never going to work. I was completely right about that.
Just like twin tips, right?
Exactly. Yeah, twin tips, exactly.
You don't need two
backwards.
Yeah, well, that's when the first time I met Jason Leventhal was at the trade show in Stratton. And he cut line to ride up the chairlift with me. He scooped in and sat down on the quad.
Nice.
And he goes, hey, Mr. Egan, my name's Jason, and all this sort of stuff. He introduced himself. And I looked down, I go, those are funny skis. And it was first pair of ski blades. He's like, yeah, I just invented them. And me and my buddy Mike Nick, we do tricks and we grind stuff and everything. He's just yapping the whole way up. And can we get them in the movies? I was like, I don't think so. Like I doubt it. And we get off.
They're like half the size.
It's like, what are you gonna do on that thing? And we get off the lift. He goes, it's funny. I go, what's funny, kid? He goes, you don't get it. And I go, I don't get what? He goes, one day we're gonna do what you do, but backwards. I was like, what? And I remember calling Jason the first time I saw somebody go off a cliff backwards. I was like, dude, son of a bitch, how did you see that? Like, what he saw so far ahead of everybody was really mind-boggling. And he went and he sold 2,500 pairs of his line ski blades to the Japanese. That was his first sale. And he called me after that. He goes, will you help me now? I'm like, yeah, maybe, But when you're talking about online, he's the first guy to go online.
Yeah.
He skipped the whole ski rep. He skipped the retail. And, listen, Jason Leventhal is the Jake Burton of skiing. There's no doubt about
it. He's the man.
Yeah.
He's the man. We skied with him this year, which was really fun. We went up to his new spot.
Nice.
Which is really sick.
Yeah.
Like really, I mean, I went into it being like, oh, this is going to be cool, but like, some part of me is like, yeah, it's going to be like, it is going to be what it is. And then you're like, holy shit, Jay, like you crushed this.
Yeah.
Like no detail,
everything.
The way how he has like that big wall of skis. It's like with a hidden door, like the whole thing. It was like he crushed it.
He's
just,
really
just
smart.
a spot to have a little bit of community, which was his goal, like growing up, going to skate shops and stuff and hanging out and watching movies and stuff. I mean, he's created that along with a ski shop and a bar and and an art gallery. And it's a really cool spot.
And it actually kind of funny because we're talking about the ski market thing, but I feel like a lot of people, myself included, with Line anyways, and I think same thing with Berkowitz, trying to get sponsored back in the day. We told that story before, but Berkowitz would try to get. He was like sending stuff to Jay, and then Jay just called him. He's like, dude, I can't sponsor you. You're just a hucker. Dude.
You don't
Still
grab,
have the email.
dude.
Still have the email.
I love that. Keep that. Print that.
Yeah, you don't grab. You're just hucking, dude.
Yeah, you're such a hucker, dude.
But I guess my what I'm trying to say is that like. Similar with like kind of ski market here, like everybody has some kind of story that connects them to Jay or Line or ski blades or whatever, because it was such a game changer.
Yeah.
And how it really it changed. Like for me, it was like the Line Prophet 90. Yeah. Like that was the biggest, ski for me. That's like, oh, it's wider than 76, right? And it's twin tipped. It has some metal, wood. And now every ski is like kind of built off that idea, you know? And that was, at the time, you're like, holy shit, that thing is humongous, you know? But now you're like, you could look at a lot of skis and you're like, the Line Prophet 90 is like kind of the benchmark.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason goes, when are you going to stop skiing on straight skis? I'm like, dude, I'm on 88s. He's like, that's a narrow ski. I'm like, that's the biggest thing I've ever seen, It's crazy.
He pulled up the day we were skiing, and I think I've told the story before. I don't care. It's fun. It's funny. We pulled up, and he's like waiting for us at Stowe, and he's got some skis on the snow, and it's me, Berkowitz, and George, and he's like, I can't believe this. And Matt's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I can't believe I'm doing a fucking demo day with a retailer. We're like, no, it's not. We're just hanging out. He's like, no, I know what this is. Yeah, I know what this is.
The lowest point of my life. I never wanted to do this.
Yeah,
it's so funny.
And they're lugging skis up the hill. He's like dragging them. He's like, I thought I got out of this. I'm going direct to the customer, skipping you guys.
Exactly. What do I want to be nice to you people? I want to go skiing.
But we had a great day.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm just messing with you. We had so much fun. We had so much fun. I mean, he's just a fun guy to be around. I mean,
he's a genius.
And he is.
He's a genius.
Genius. And skiing on his skis for the first time, I think it was like out at Powder Week, and then kind of like demoing them as they've gotten better and better. And he's changed the way everything is about the skis have just gotten better, and they were good to start.
Yeah.
And to hear like how many he's doing online direct is just is awesome. And I said to him, and I think we all kind of did. We're like, dude, we're just one store, obviously, in this one city in the whole country, and like the amount of J's. Like if you weren't selling Jay skis, we would sell like another big slug of skis to these people.
Right.
But because they come in to get them mounted.
Yeah.
So you see.
Yeah, you know how many are coming through.
Just one location, right?
Yeah.
So you see, you're like, holy shit, like how many people are bringing these skis in, like every single weekend, and they're buying a binding from it, which is great. I'm stoked for Jay, but it's kind of wild, like where they would be buying skis most likely, whether it's local or if they'd buy another brand for sure, right?
Right, and that's another example of how he broke through entrenched thinking, and how he manages inventory and how he looks at it. It's a whole different philosophy and he's been looking at it from the early days of line.
Right.
This is not new to him. You know, he saw what the big companies were doing, how they were mishandling inventory, mishandling manufacturing and all that. And he's been, you know, I just think how he broke so many different ways of thinking in the ski industry over the 2-3 decades he's been doing it. It's unbelievable.
I mean, every time he came up with a new idea, everyone told him it's not going to work.
That's right.
Every time. You know, and he just said F you, like it's going to work.
Yeah.
Except for the binding, but yeah.
Except for the binding.
I still hold. Well, the Velcro binding was a good idea. He had me on that.
He had a lot of people.
Great video. But that's Jay, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's another, just like you said, I mean, really breaking that way of marketing in the ski industry. I mean, he's done it differently, and it sticks out, and people like it, and it's funny.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he comes up with something great, you know, multiple times a year, to be honest.
He does.
Yeah.
And again, it's stuff that stops people that we've seen that stuff a million times, and you're like, wait, is this for real? Especially if you know Jay, you know those things that he's come up with over the years, and you're like, well, shit, this might be real for him.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, just that one day alone, I think we came up with like at least like 6 or 7 like really goofy, wacky ideas.
Yeah.
You know, and like, you know, just like talking on the chairlift or whatever, and you're like, that actually might work.
Yeah, and then we left, and we're like, he's definitely gonna bring one of those to market.
Yeah,
like, God damn it.
What was the patch we came up with? I saw the sun at Stowe today.
Yeah.
You see the sun at Stowe
Yeah.
in the wintertime, you get out, at the end of the day, they give you a patch.
Give you a patch. Yep.
And then he started talking about it. I'm like, he might actually, that could go viral. Like, he could do that, you know?
Yep.
I want to go back real quick to Slovenia because you said something that's really interesting. Because we went there, same idea, super cool, right? Factory tour, the whole thing. But now they have a really, really well done museum, like ski history museum for Elan. And I'm sure, you know, some of those skis that you saw, you know, when you were kind of like laughing, you know, are like they're there.
Yeah.
And they have like, it's really cool how they have it laid out. They have almost like every single year and how they, you know, from the position of the company to like where we are, and like you can see the progress. It's really well done.
Cool.
It's really well done, and they talk a lot about, you know, the Nazis, because like they built skis to fight the Nazis, and then they talk about the revolution and the you know, becoming Slovenia. So you were there. You mentioned that, like you said, 60 days prior, like a couple months before the actual. Like, could you feel the vibe? Would like everyone know like this was going down?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first place that got blown up in that Civil War was a ski area, because it had communication towers on top. We had just skied there. Wow. And it was a fascinating time to be there. But, you know, Slovenia basically controlled 75% of the economy of Yugoslavia. So they laughed at the war. They were like, we're just taking our chips and doing our own thing. And I think that for that region, Slovenia, it was the shortest part of the Civil War. You know, they think of, they're Europeans, you know, the Julian Alps and everything, and they're right on the border of Austria. So, yeah, we definitely felt it, and we were part of that, you know. As we were with so many other war-torn areas, it was fascinating to be there. But there was a woman who was the first female member of the North Face Extreme team, and Alinka was Yugoslavian. That's why we went.
Got it.
And we stayed with her parents and all that.
Very cool.
Yeah, and I just the other day, you know, this winter bumped into one of her sons. So
that's sweet.
And I have I'm like, dude, I have pictures of your grandfather when he, you know, was, you know, in his 70s out hiking me.
That's cool.
You know, up the couloirs and stuff.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I feel like your career too, at least from a kid watching Warren Miller movies, like you were often traveling to places that were, you know, in political
following
strife.
the news.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
And is that something that was planned? Did it just work out that way? Was that?
Yeah, it was definitely a pretty, you know, it was an amazing time, right? With the fall of the Cold War. Like, if you had grown up as a Cold War kid, you know, with the threat of nuclear war constant and fallout shelters and all those sort of things that we grew up with.
Yeah.
The fact that was going to change blew my mind. So, you know, the fall of the Berlin Wall I was fascinated with. And And when we were living in Val d'Isere, squatting in a studio apartment with 7 people, okay, from 5 different countries, and with Tom Day and his wife, and little Danny Day was 3 years old. We were all living in a studio apartment.
Jeez.
And the owner of the apartment said, "Hey, you guys got to get out. The French holidays are coming." And so we had no place to go, so we went to the bar. And Ewing Guinness, the grandson of the Guinness company, he had just lost his license.
Wonder why?
Another time, you know. And I said to John, I go, I don't think Ewing's going to use his van. He goes, "Oh, right." He goes, so he runs over to Ewing, and sometime during the night, John shows back up, and he's dangling the keys to Ewing's van. I go, "Did we buy a van?" He goes, "Nope, test drive." So we loaded everybody in the apartment, the Swedish mogul champion Lotta, and the English guy, and the Canadian, and Tom and Lizzie and the baby.
Nice.
And they go, "Where are we going?" I said, "Berlin Wall. We're going to the Berlin Wall."
Wow.
And the van had no registration, no license plate, no insurance.
Yeah.
And we were loaded up, and we just pointed it. We went through Chamonix, picked up some gear, and it's a long drive, by the way, to the Berlin Wall. And when we got to East Berlin, we got fleeced by the guards. They're like, "Papers?" We're like, "We don't have papers." The guy's looking in. There's a kid in diapers, there's ski equipment, people wrapped around their sleeping bags and their skis. And so we bribed him, and the guy let us through. Nice. And Tom Day's filming all that, of course, out the back. And so that dude, he called his friends. So they pulled us over every 10 kilometers and did the same routine. Paper, no papers, like how much, that sort of thing. And we jumped off the Berlin Wall. Yeah. And, at that point, we were really standing at the intersection of extreme sports and current culture in a way we couldn't have had imagined. Yeah. Those photos of us coming off the wall, they went viral before viral was even a thing. I mean, that went to newspapers. That was such an odd sight. There's no snow. Right. We landed in a mud puddle. Right. But that still image really was like, what's going on here? And the reaction that I saw from that was like, and Warren freaked out. Warren's like, "Yeah, that's what we want." Yeah. He loved it. So that's kind of what stirred the whole thing. Like, we should do it again, because Warren would just say, "Where are you going next?" We're like, "Oh, we'll go to Russia." Yeah. It was still Yugoslavia. Right. It was still USSR. Yeah. And, the only thing the Russians knew about the West was MTV and CNN. Right. That was it. Right. So when we show up as a film crew, we're like, Hollywood? Like, yeah, Hollywood. Right. And, so that sort of reception and conversation around a changing world was so exciting.
So did Warren give you guys kind of the freedom to say, "Hey, we want to go do something in Russia"? Or was he like, "Hey, you guys, here's the plan"?
Well, we're the only skiers to own our own footage in Warren Miller Films. Oh, okay. So I would pitch Warren, and he and I would come to our contract. He guaranteed me so many minutes in his film. Okay. And I had rights to all the other footage. Oh, wow. Yeah. So that's how I launched all my own videos, and my TV show was on the extra footage. So, he would always go over his guarantee. If he promised me 6-7 minutes, he'd use 10, when you counted the opening montage, the closing montage, and, the jokes, and, the guys shining our ski boots and all that other stuff. Yeah. So, Warren encouraged that. The thing, what's interesting, again, going back to this idea of entrenched thinking, Warren was the sort of guy that people were afraid of. So not a lot of people asked Warren questions. Right. They were like, "Yes, Warren, no, Warren." But I was like curious with Warren. So when I asked him a question, he considered it. When I said, "Warren, could we own our footage in your movie?" He's like, "How would that work?"
Nobody's ever asked.
Nobody's asked.
Right, right.
And
I guess, yeah.
And he was like, "How would it work?" And I said, "Well, what if you did this and I did that?" And he loved that. I had enough balls to ask him. Right. And 2, he would encourage it. That's how we got to know each other so well. He flew me down to Portillo, 1989, the summer of '89. And I had heard that if you show up in Hermosa Beach at the office, they'll let you drive the Audi. So I was like, so I'm driving the Audi around the beach, you know, this could be sick.
Yeah.
So I show up a few days early. He goes, Egan, you're early. I'm like, here comes the keys, you know.
Yeah.
He goes, make yourself useful. Sweep the floor, you know. And so I go, where? He goes, in the editing room. So, you know, it's all 16 mil all over the floor.
Yeah, yeah.
And I go, Warren, what do you want me to do with this? He goes, make a movie out of it. You're the first kid to sweep the floor. And so I took him seriously.
Yeah.
You know, that's how I made my first movie.
Okay.
And
wild.
he said, now let's work on your narration. When I showed him the movie, he's like, okay, well, this is how you're going to narrate it. I'm like, you know. And so I became his front guy, and I would go to every major city 2 weeks ahead of the Warren Miller tour with this little film. And that eventually became my film.
Yep.
And I narrated live. I'm still, I think, the only guy left to narrate live. And all that I learned from Warren.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it was, you know, it's that sort of thing where, like, I'd show up in Park City, one-person shows, right? Every night I'd call Warren. I go, Warren, how'd the night go? I go, not good, Warren. One person. Oh, good job. Yeah. I go, the screen fell over. He goes, yeah, you know. He goes, did the guy buy you dinner? I go, yeah. He goes, you had a great night. What the hell are you complaining about, you know? That's the way it was, you know? Yeah.
That's crazy.
But I mean, you got to get reps, you know?
Yeah.
How else would you get reps?
That's it.
Right. So, you know, he shows you a little bit and then you're like, all right, I can do that.
Yeah.
And, or else what?
Yeah.
You're
right.
going to play it to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. You know? But, you know, back to Boston, when I called the Boston Ski Show and, you know, Ski Market's the retailer, and I, you know, knew Mike and I knew, you know, Leak and everybody. Mm-hmm. And Bernie's like, well, are they selling your movies? I'm like, yeah, they're selling our movies. Like, I'll give you the theater. So next thing, you know, Bernie Weissel gives me the theater in Baltimore, in Boston, in Philadelphia, in Seattle, in Denver. And all of a sudden, I have the theater. Not Greg Stump,
right?
Not Warren Miller. It's a Dan Egan theater.
Yeah.
And the movie I started making with Warren, that's what I showed. And that's how I held the theaters for all those years and worked with Bernie. And
you were live narrating
I was live narrating all those shows.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's really cool. And you got more than one person show up for those.
We got more than one person. Yeah, the narration would change all the time. You know, you just check out different jokes. I mean, you know, Warren had 3 jokes that he told during his montage. And based on those jokes, he would change the narration for the entire movie. He would see what crowd's there tonight. Mm-hmm. Was it a family? Was it adventure? What were they after? Okay. He'd drop those jokes. And then with no script, he'd just go.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an art.
Yeah.
In a form of what you do, Garrett.
I know. This is hitting close to home here.
It's like stand-up
One person
comedy.
showing up. Oof. Seen that before.
Well, you know, with all those things, you have to get over yourself like this is and still perform.
Yeah.
You know, is it a great show because one showed up or because 100 showed up? Right. And that was Warren's message. Like, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Are you going to show up the same authentically every time? Does it matter how many people are there? And to your point, how many people in the store? You're doing a better job with less.
Right.
So, you know, I think those are important things to get your head around.
Absolutely. Thinking about the Boston Ski Show, because, you know, you doing that there and having these theaters, like, talk about seeing it at its peak. Mm. I mean, it was just madness there.
Dude,
I mean, it must have just been insane. Like the peak of ski market, you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
Like just thousands and thousands of people.
You know, prior to, you know, you had the hot dog movement, right, in the 70s, and those ski shows were massive. And then there's a lull. But when we show up in day glow and headbands and big hair and jumping off cliffs and the birth of the VCR, like it came back. And, you know, John and I, we could not literally walk through the ski show. We were mobbed.
Yeah.
You know, our booth with, you know, the Egan brother logo was designed by the designer for the Grateful Dead.
Sick.
Nice.
And that designer had 3 clients, Jake Burton, Jerry Garcia, and the Egans. Okay?
That's cool.
And so all of our logo wear was totally cool, and it looked like the Dead. And we would she would embroider your jacket and do all that stuff right there at the show. So, we had a cool thing to sell. We had our videos, we had T-shirts, and we had the theater. And outside the theater was Alan Schoenberger, who is the mime that dances on the moving carpet. So he was doing a full theatrical show, and he called
at the Boston Ski Show?
At the Boston Ski Show, full on theatrics. And his whole thing was as a skiing mime, he would push the ball up the hill and it kept rolling down. And the piano played, and he rode a unicycle on the moving carpet. He skied, he did ballet tricks. It was insane. And, when they went from that show, they just walked into my theater and sat down. And it was crazy.
Tough act to follow there with the mime.
Oh, man, we just put him in the Hall of Fame. If you don't know Alan Schoenberger, he's a genius. And he took that show to off-Broadway. So he had his own show just off Broadway for quite a while. So, this idea of how do we move skiing beyond the resort? How do we move it into the masses? How do we show it off and grow it? And that's what the Boston Ski Show did forever. The London Ski Show was 15 days long back then.
What?
15 days.
Jesus.
And it was full. We would be there. I had the theater at the London show. And it was a mob scene for 15 days. And you just couldn't believe it, the whole thing.
And was there a retail aspect there as well?
Retailers there and the whole bit. And, today we think technology and phones and all this sort of stuff, and, you're selling online. You got to go back. The leading technology of the day was a VCR machine and a fax machine.
Yeah.
This is just at the, FedEx is just starting.
Yeah.
You got to go all the way back and think about what a revolution that was. The idea that skiing, snowboarding, skateboarding would go into your home and live in your shelves. Those cassette tapes sat around for 15 years. It's not, Instagram's over and done with. It's a quick thing, but our film sat in those ski condos forever.
I still have all my. I was telling these guys earlier. I was like, I still have at my parents' house a bunch of Warren Miller, tapes playing the VCR. I was telling Eric one of my most memorable clips was of you and your brother at Grand Targhee when the cornice breaks off.
It's amazing that I still have people come up and sing "Return of the Shred-Eye" to me. You know what I mean? And quote, the Advance to the Steeps and the Double Exposure film with Eric and Rob Delorier. And, the fact that the cornice break became the most viewed Warren Miller shot of all time is because of video, right? That was without the internet, it took off. And just outrageous.
Well, just think about you bringing that up, like how many times you rewound it and watched rewound it and watched it. And that was hard. Well, not that it's hard, but a lot harder than it is now, right? So you're like, oh no, let's watch that part again and again and again. And it's like now we just take it for granted because to your point, it's in and out, and you're on the next thing. And at the time, the only way to consume that was to like you're all in on that was crazy. Or if I want to get a video, or I want to see what's new, or I want to talk to somebody that is into what I'm into, you had to go to the ski. That would be the place where you could go, and there was no other outlet.
Yeah, and think the North Face film, Skiing Extreme 1. Okay, that was the first action sports video without narration. It was the first all music action video. Okay, I mean that wasn't even a thing. And people were like, where's the narration? That's how entrenched narration was. It was 22 minutes long. There were 21 falls. Okay. And that was like Powder Magazine says 21 crashes, 22 minutes, can't miss it, But, Eric Perlman was like, we're going to do a movie with music. And we're like, what? Just music? He had classical music. He had, cutting edge music. And then you see how we get the Blizzard, right? Because Stump takes, the coolest music, his voice, his narration, and what he does is a mix of the two. Yeah. So if all his footage is slow-mo, right? So the slow-mo is pushing you back, the music's moving you forward, and Greg's telling you a story you want to hear, and now all of a sudden the kid's got a mohawk. You're like, what?
Yeah, you're listening to Seal sing into your
right.
ear.
Yeah. And Scotty taking a big crash, and you still have it in your head.
Yeah,
I mean, it puts you in a trance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
It really does. It's the first time. Well, not now we're just used to it, but at the time it would be the first time where you're literally watching all three of those components together, and you just like your brain is like melted.
That's right.
You're like, I can't look away.
You can't
Like,
look away.
what's going to happen next?
Yeah. Yeah, and when you break it down, I mean, really, the skiing in Blizzard wasn't all that good. It's not all that extreme. I mean, it is at the end in the last bit in Chamonix, but really, it's a mogul skiing movie.
Yeah.
But the characters and the music and the location and the story, of Blizzard of Oz.
Yeah.
And that's the entrenchment. That's when you really get hooked in.
Yeah, and the character. I mean, obviously the characters in there with Hattrip and Blake, and I mean that was still.
So we just put Mike Hattrip in the Hall of Fame.
Yep.
And did you see that he walked in like Rocky?
Yeah.
And he had his belt and his daughter. It was a great scene.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Hattrip's an amazing human.
Amazing guy. Yeah.
I'm glad that that we kind of naturally went this way with ski movies, because that's what I wanted to ask you about, because of what's happening now. Especially like now that I know your deep personal connection with Warren, like him kind of like giving you the rope and be like, hey man, go ahead, go make a movie. So what do you think about what's happening now? Unfortunately, after 70 plus years, what's your perspective on that?
Well, it's an evolution, right? And I think the new movie is going to be great. Mm-hmm. There's an archive there that is unbelievable. I think Warren Miller Entertainment and Outside didn't foresee the PR that would happen if they didn't, they blew the announcement.
Yeah,
they could have totally handled it. And in my opinion, Chris, I was like, what? I was pissed.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm an independent promoter. I have great locations. I have great shows. I don't want somebody pissing off the audience about these shows.
Right.
And Chris was employed for 25 years. Mm-hmm. Like, take your wine and go somewhere else. Like, to me, it was like, I'm sorry he lost his contract, but hit the perspective of that over the years.
Yeah.
A lot of us have lost our contracts. He's not the first guy to get let go from Warren Miller Entertainment. And I just thought that was a bad start for what Warren wants to do. Mm-hmm. And then I saw the cruise out and about this year. So I don't think it's a total archival film in the end of the day.
Interesting.
My perspective on the film tour was, I'm not a fan of subscription. I understand subscription. I understand how subscriptions work, but I think Outside sort of pirated a very special thing when they started including tickets with subscriptions to Outside Plus. And, that gets a little touchy, right? Because think about this now. There's been no surf movie, no skate, no other genre has done what ski's been able to do, ski and snowboard, for so long. Warren Miller has 9 top grossing films on the all-time 20 top grossing list. 9.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. There's no other tour that compares. Warren Miller himself is the most prolific American filmmaker of all time in all genres. Nobody's made more films than Mr. Warren Miller.
Right.
So what we have here is something special which we should celebrate. The idea of going to a theater, eating popcorn, getting excited with your family, the generational ties that film has provided for retailers, for ski areas, for skiers, for all across the board. One generation to another, it's been Warren Miller. Mm-hmm. No other brand's done it. TGR hasn't, nobody's done it. Mm-hmm. And for an upset contractor to use social media, I thought that, I didn't think it was a classy move.
Yeah.
What's missing from that perspective is the 7 other DPs that have gone before him.
Right.
The other generations of skiers from Stein Eriksen forward that have come before him. Look, I'm a huge fan of the current batch of skiers. I hang out with Marcus Gaston. I'm in awe of these guys. but we only get a turn at this thing.
Right.
We don't have long, I'm not going to retire on my film rights, right? So, there's going to be another batch. Somebody's going to jump a bigger cliff. Somebody's going to do a bigger flip. We've all seen it. And it's such a special thing, Look, the tour is going to be back. It's going to be bigger than ever.
Yep.
A 75th anniversary movie 2 years from now is going to be great. Now, look, selfishly, I hope they use some of my stuff.
You're a ski movie star again.
You know what I mean? Like, they're bound to stumble into some Egan footage, right? So, okay, we get another shot. John, myself, Scott, and Tom Day, we all shot in Future Retro, which is the worst Warren Miller film of all time, and came out during COVID, so nobody saw it.
Right.
And here we are, really the four guys. It was amazing skiing with those guys again. And for me, at this age, watching Schmitty, I was still in awe. I was a fan before I was a pro skier. And to sit around watching him, first run of the film shoot, he's hucking a cliff. I'm like, dude, what? Chill out, bro.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, go around it, mate. Nobody cares, But
we'll get to that. We'll get to that eventually.
I got to warm up. And of course, it's at the YC. It's his backyard.
Yeah.
It's his cliff. I'm like, okay, dude.
Yeah.
All right.
Done it a million times.
But I was in awe. I was like loving it. And I think the films do so much for so many. At all of the shows I do, people still remember seeing Warren. They remember being in a school gym. People remember their first Warren Miller movie. It's like the first time we go to Fenway Park.
Yep.
So it's unfortunate for me, one, that maybe outside doesn't fully understand the impact of what they own and that they're the owner of the legacy of. But two, it was just it's a good example of bad PR. They should have, the minute they made that decision, they should have had a plan for telling all of us what that plan would be.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm glad to hear you say that because, I mean, it is a bummer for sure. The way I see it as someone that's worked in the ski business for as long as I have now, it's like when the new movies come out, it's the start of a new year.
Yeah.
It's the start of another season, and that season, it's like, what are we going to accomplish this season? What do we want to ski? What are we going to ski on? And from a business perspective, it's a new year. Like, what are we going to do? What are we going to sell?
Yeah.
This is going to be fun. And those movies, and same thing with the magazines, like, it's such a huge part of that. Not only does it make you excited, but it's just from a tradition standpoint, it feels good.
Yeah.
When the new movies come out, you're excited. Like, you're going to go to the premiere. Like, vendors are going to come by. Like, whoever's sponsoring the movies, like, hey, you guys, let's go out and get some beers and go to the movie. And you're like, yeah, this is awesome. Like, it's the season again,
Yeah.
And for them to kind of just like take that away, the way that they did is, and also for them to take away certain magazine aspects of what they own as well is a huge bummer.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hard game they're playing. I got fired by Warren Miller. I was coming back from the vineyard, and I was on the ferry, and my phone rang. And at the time, I oversaw 21 cities for the tour. Chicago East, all those were my shows. And I did all the PR and ran all the athletes. And kid goes, hey, Mr. Egan, I'm the intern at Warren Miller Entertainment. And I'm like, okay, intern, really? Okay. And I'm supposed to tell you we're taking all your accounts in-house. I go, really? I go, you're the intern. I go, yeah. I go, where do you go to college? Oh, I go here and there. How long you been an intern? Oh, 2 weeks. I said, dude, you should get a raise. I said, you're going to go far in life. I'm like, I admire you, bro. You don't know who I am. You're calling me up.
It's a hell of a call.
You're kicking me out the door, and you did it pretty good.
Yeah.
I said,
props.
You should stay in touch with me, mate. You're a hard worker, And I hung up the phone, and I thought, look, they'd already fired Warren, right? There's only a handful of us that even remember working with Warren left at the company.
Right.
And I wrote down the title of my book right then and there, White Haze. And I said, what would Warren do? Warren would write a book. And, when you think of Warren's books, Wine, Women, and Warren, lurching from one disaster to another, like that is just the way the industry works. And I don't think we can take this stuff personally. Like, it's been a good ride. Mm-hmm. Like, the fact that I'm still talking about Warren.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
I'm the luckiest guy in the world. So nothing's going to disappoint me when it comes to the Warren Miller brand. I owe my entire career to the Warren Miller brand, and it is a very powerful brand. And I think people need to have perspective on what that means, and really, saturate in the power of what that brand's done for not only action sports, filming, technique, graphics, music, sound effects, locations. Look, when Russia wanted the Olympics, first American film crew into Russia, Warren Miller Films. China wanted the Olympics, first American. They went to Warren Miller. We were the first film crews in all these locations because, one, of the reputation of the company, and two, they knew we would get it done.
Right.
And it would showcase to the world these locations. And nobody's been able to pull that off like Warren Miller Films.
Yeah. I mean, you basically took all those components that you talked about and put them in a ski movie all way back when, and it literally changed the way that all of us consumed ski movies for a course of, 20 plus years?
Oh, yeah. Longer.
Longer. Yeah.
Longer.
Yeah. That's good.
And that's what's cool is it, and not taking anything away from the TGRs, the MSPs, the level ones, but I think the generations that Warren Miller has spanned, and like you said, probably most people remember going to see their first Warren Miller movie, and when Twin Tips came out, I think Warren Miller saw like a little downturn because of the TGRs and the level ones were making, Johnny Cesare was making movies, and it was like, all right, the Warren Miller movies aren't cool anymore, but they rode through it, and they were always sold out, no matter what. Even in those years that it might not have been as cool.
Yeah.
Like TGR movies did well, sure, but like Warren Miller sold out every single year.
I mean, everyone that I went to in Boston, like wherever it was, completely full.
Yeah.
And it worked both ways, right?
Yep.
TGR, Level 1, they all made Warren better.
Yep.
Stumpy made Warren Miller better. Like, Warren Miller had to change and had to adapt every time these things happen. And, the running joke for decades is, Warren Miller makes the best movie. Everybody else makes a bad Warren Miller movie. Right? And, and I've been one of those producers that's made bad Warren Miller films.
Yep.
And, it's hard to match. And I've tried to fill theaters. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's one thing to fill a bar,
Right.
an entertainment venue, but fill a theater, the Berkeley Performance Theater.
Right.
You look, in 5,000 people at the Avon in Connecticut in one night.
Yeah.
The X Games are struggling to do that.
That's insane.
It's hard to get people to show up to anything.
Yeah.
And when you see an event that has people show up, you're like, wow, like this is something. Like people are excited about this. I mean, just a bar, nightclub, stand up, whatever it is, to get anyone to show up is almost, it feels like it's impossible. And so when you do go to those events and the theater is full of people to watch a ski movie, you're like, holy shit, this is really cool.
Yeah, I made a movie called Ski Academy. When I went back, and none of my stuff's online, so we're putting it online, but to see who's in there, some of the early guys, we talked about Tenny.
Yeah.
JPL Claire coming to Tenny Mountain.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Simon Dumont coming to side, a 12-year-old Simon Dumont.
Right.
Yeah. So,
He had a run, huh?
I mean, Simon's amazing,
Insane.
right? What a career.
What a run.
He's still alive.
It's crazy.
It's great.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of those guys. It's pretty amazing.
So
Remember that red and white kit, that Oakley kit?
yeah.
That was everywhere.
Yeah.
That was like that red Oakley, like what was like the splice at the time?
Yeah. I think he just wore that again. Did you see that?
Yeah. Him and Tom Wallace
Yeah.
came out with an edit wearing their kits from 12 years ago.
That's really rad.
Riding Park City, and they both still got it,
That's
man.
sick.
Oh, yeah. No
That's
doubt.
sick.
No doubt.
Simon's still 4'7", but
Is he really?
yeah,
I've
he's
never
not
met him.
short.
Oh man, I don't know. I've never
He's
met him.
not 4'7", but he's short.
Never met him.
Sorry, Simon.
Well, Garrett wanted me to ask you about the Warren Miller 2 rat story.
Oh yeah, this
Well-
is my favorite.
Well, Warren had a lot of, actually it was Don Berlin was Warren Miller's producer, and that's who you had. That was the gatekeeper for everything, was Don Berlin, and he was a real filmmaker. He would check, like, if shooting film, you have to remember that a roll of film is 3 minutes long. 3 minutes. And those guys had to change those out all the time in the cold.
Right.
In a dart bag, changing what they can't see, everything so it didn't expose the film.
Right.
I had cameraman doing that in the Arctic at 40 below.
Jeez.
And the dreaded thing for any cameraman would be a hair in the gate.
Yeah.
And if you had a hair in the gate, if you had a hairy gate, Warren would take a picture of it, and you'd get a copy of it. But the other thing was shooting in flat light. Today's video cameras, you can get away with it, but on film, you really couldn't get away if you didn't have trees, if you didn't have any contrast, and the dreaded call on any. Remember, we're owning our own footage. We need him to buy it.
Yeah.
Is Dan, that flat light looks like two white rats fucking in a snowstorm. And that those sort of calls, like you're like, oh shit, they're not going to use it. It's great action. Yeah, nobody can see it. And I'm in day glow, nobody can see it. So yeah. But that was sort of the conversations that happened all the time.
I mean, there's got to be a bunch more of those, like Warrenisms, if you will, right?
I'll go all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just so amazing with Warren. I mean, he meets my parents. Your boys remind me. I'm never sure of how many lives I've ruined. Yeah. Warren. My mom didn't talk to Warren for years because of some of his narration that he said about me.
Really?
Dan's from a family of born-again atheists. I'm like, geez. I thought my mom was going to walk out of the theater, It was so, that was such it. I'm like, Warren, you're crushing me here, mate.
It's so good. It's so good. Well, we have to talk about this because you traveled with him.
Yes, Gary.
So I need to hear a little bit about that, about the Finn boys down in what? Where were you guys? You're in South America, right?
What is it called? The
Ferriones.
Ferriones. Yeah.
And how old were you?
Chilling with the stray dogs and living in a nightclub.
We'll have to dig up that segment's classic.
It's
a really good one.
18 years old, going down with my brother Jack. He was like 15, older brother 20, and Dan and Colt, who Colt was part of the team, and we had a week. We got snowed in this small village in Chile, and
what kind of punishment was that for you that you ended up going down there with the Finn family?
Well, I mean, look, the Finns are legends, right?
It's true.
Around Loon,
Hall of Famers.
they're
Our own Hall of Fame.
Don't give him that. Don't give him that.
they're legends.
His head just went.
It was already that big.
And what were they thinking to let us take these kids out of the country? Right? They're already like a menace in their own town.
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that, the school that Garrett went to and I worked for, the race team was there, and they were a little different than the free ride team.
Yeah.
Like they had curfews, and there was like. Yeah, and we didn't have any of that, nor did I care to have any of that on my trips. I was like, get the plane's in 3 days.
Don't die.
Yeah, just get back to
Back to the airport on this time.
I'm cool with it, boys.
And leave the dog.
Yeah, don't save any dogs. So so that was a shock to the culture of the academy. I think to see the Finn boys in full display, because there were 3 of them.
Yep.
But you can find that on my YouTube. That's a great segment. Beautiful snow. And of course, that's the thing about South America. It can snow 12 feet in 1 week, one couple days.
Yeah, it snowed 12 feet, and we couldn't go skiing because the visibility was too bad. You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. So
Like 2 white rats. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But man, I mean, that just made more time for extracurriculars once we couldn't go skiing.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I had some explaining to do back being in charge. But
the hostel we were staying in was attached to the only nightclub in town. And there was like a little lobby area where everybody would hang out after skiing. But eventually it would turn into a nightclub. And you knew it was turning into a nightclub because they'd start pushing the tables aside. And every day, me and my brothers would take it on ourselves to just start pushing the tables to the side.
It's 11 in the morning.
Boys, we clearing the tables?
It's time. It's time. Let's open this bitch up.
How old was Jack at the time?
Like 15.
Nice.
Yeah.
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 But anything goes down there. And
Oh my God.
my mom signed a permission slip.
Right. Yeah, right. And I'm responsible, so that works.
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible. It's funny because I could see the whole thing now that I've known you for a couple hours. I could see this whole thing fucking unfolding, especially with the Finn boys. Jesus.
Oh my God. Well, anything in the spirit of ski bumming,
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's sort of one of the things that really is missing for me now, and I think that idea of, starting the nightclub early or, the frozen t-shirt contest, whatever it is, that's gone. And it's hard for ski areas to hold the culture of what is the glue of our industry. And I think it's really, really important, that spirit of adventure is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Yeah, less and less events at resorts compared to when we were kids. I mean, there was, and you brought up Les Otten earlier. I mean, Les Otten, when he was, running American Ski Company, I mean, there was events every single weekend.
Absolutely.
Bud Light did the whole Bud Light,
That's right.
Border Fest, skier cross, big air, half pipe, every single weekend.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, maybe there's pond skim in the spring and that's it.
Yeah, and they don't even want to do that,
Right.
really,
Right.
And that's the thing, is that spirit. When the locals can't live at the base of the lifts, when you can't squat in a condo anymore, we used to get by just knowing property managers because they had the keys,
Right.
and that we always had a place to stay.
Yeah.
In all these different resorts, Whistler, Aspen, Vail. We just called the property managers because we partied with them.
Right.
And we'd have a place to stay. And that's how we skied with the gold medallions at Vail and, got into the lodges and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
They'll throw you in jail now.
Right.
It's like, it's not the same.
Yeah.
And to me, we can't take ourselves too seriously.
Yep.
It's skiing, it's snowboarding. It should be fun. And that's the whole idea of this thing, is fun. Look, I love all the new lifts. It's great. They're 6-packs, 8-packs. But I don't want to talk to anybody on those lifts. I don't know who's on the lift with me.
Yeah.
I hurt my neck. Plus, I can't see around their helmets. And now they're wearing helmets and they're putting things over their helmets.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even get it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in a wool cap, bro. You know what I mean? Like, I needed a helmet in the 80s. You're like, what the hell you give me a helmet now? I'm an old guy, And it's just insane. Like, what do we... And now they have helmets and they're listening to music. Like, okay, it's not enough to go skiing. Now I have to listen to music. And I asked somebody a question. They pushed their ear. I'm like, what are they doing? I don't know what they're doing. Cleaning the wax out. Oh, they're turning the music off, right? Yeah. And we've lost that peach. And I know I sound like an old guy saying all that stuff, but I was at Killington, and I saw this kid. I love when I see good skiing. I love it.
Yeah.
I go, dude, you rip, man. He goes, dude, he goes, old man. He goes, you rip. I go, dude, how'd you know I'm old? He's like, you don't wear a helmet, kid. And I'm like, holy shit, what? That's a giveaway. I didn't know it. But I will always go up when I see somebody do something.
Yeah.
Whether it's in the park, in the bumps, in the powder, up on Lone Peak at Big Sky. Like, if I see good skiing, I'm going to call it out. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I wish the resorts would show more of that. I'm over the POV. Like, all you pros out there, get rid of your PO. It sucks. I'm over it. It's not eye candy to me anymore. Yeah. It's boring.
Yeah.
Let's see some turns.
Right.
And all I go on social media, it's all POV. It's
because
weird.
they don't have film crews like you do.
They don't have film. They don't have film crews.
Yeah.
They have all the technology.
Yeah.
But the idea of technology is to enhance what we're doing. And Warren always said, look, your only job is to make the place better. Make it look better. Leave your mark.
Yep.
Don't junk it up. Leave nice tracks.
Yep.
Make them flow with the terrain.
Yeah.
People used to think you had to be a great skier to get in a movie. You didn't. You had to be a good choreographer. You had to understand cameras. You had to understand frame. You had to understand sun, light, shadow.
Yep.
All that made for a good ski movie guy, right? Or girl.
Yep.
But it wasn't, look, some of the best skiers I know never made it in the film because they couldn't do it. It was its own thing.
Yeah.
You know, and these days I'm watching, you know, straight lining and just rush after rush after rush edited together with a bunch of POV. Like I've told all the current filmmakers, it's a boring edit. You're lazy at it. You have the best athletes, you got the best sponsors, you got helicopters. Spend some money on an edit.
Yep.
You know, learn the art of editing.
Yep.
It's not the same.
Yep.
Yeah.
What's your split as far as time goes? You said, you know, you've got skis on the East, skis in Big Sky, skis in Europe. What's your winter look like?
Yeah, fun. My winters look like fun, man. It's full on for me. I kick off in Zermatt. I run a camp over in Zermatt first week of December.
Okay.
We do 2 weeks there. Then I pop out the Big Sky for my early bird camp.
Yep.
I come back east for my Warren Miller shows. They're annuals. People show up for years now, and it's a lot of fun. Then I'm back to Big Sky for some steep camps. I catch up with the famed Marcus Kasten and Engelberg, and I'm in awe of what the dude can do on skis. Like, he's in that sweet spot. He crushes it. Then I'm back to Big Sky. I've got some heli camps up in AK in early March. And then back to Europe and park it there till May.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a fun winter, you know, and for me, I go where my community is. The skiing's great, but for me, the friendships and the relationships really, you know, at this stage of my career, that's where I want to be. I want to be around people I know and people I like. And I like to go back to the same spots. It's better for me as a coach and a guide to know the spots instead of having to learn new places. I feel like I deliver a better experience. Back in the day, you know, I was, 13, 14 locations a year. And learning, I was 25 years in Chamonix with camps and all this sort of stuff. But now, when I go to Val d'Isere, I have community. I've got, my god kids there and my friends. And it's as much about going to the guide meeting and having coffee with my friends as much as the snow. So, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, before we wrap, I have to ask you this because it's been something that I've thought about since I heard the story. Your Russian story is legendary, obviously, for lots of different reasons. Selfishly, I'm gonna ask a selfish question. It was every part about that story is probably is a 30-minute talking point. But for me, one of the craziest parts of it, because it's still kind of like this mysterious thing, is the person that helped save you essentially was KGB.
Yeah,
that part is just when you throw it in at the end, you're like, really?
Yeah,
the guy was just following you guys around the whole time.
Yeah.
Just because of the time frame that you guys were there.
Yeah.
And just making sure that no Americans, well, really, we can't have any Americans get injured or worse, die.
Yeah.
Under what is happening in the world. That part of the story to me is the craziest part.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because look at, you get home, whatever, you're laying there and then you're like, wait a second, hold on a second. Let me just peel back what just happened to me.
Yeah.
The wildest things that are happening in my life. And then the whole time, literally there was a KGB agent just making sure I didn't die.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a twist of fate. And, it's something I don't talk a lot about because it's hard to believe.
Right.
It's people don't believe it. And, but again, going back to those times, look, when we were in Turkey during the first Persian Gulf War, the Turkish intelligence, they knew we were there. Mm-hmm. Romania, same thing. Yugoslavia, same thing. So, Russia, the first thing that happens to us when we land in Moscow was that night at midnight. There were 9 different languages on the trip. At midnight, your phone rang, and in your native tongue, "Are you okay?"
So weird.
It's crazy, right?
Crazy.
So and that was it. No conversation.
No conversation. Just click.
Making sure you were there.
Making sure you're in the hotel room. Yeah. They had our passports, everything, right?
You get goosebumps thinking about that.
Yeah.
It's that is so...
Yeah, and how scary is that? They're taking your passport.
Yeah, they take your passport.
Which is crazy.
Yeah. And I've been in situations where I've had to fight for my passport.
Yeah.
With armed people.
Yeah.
So, it's... Having lived through it, it's not a far stretch. And, the fact that Sasha, who was just an insane human, like 6'4". He survived that entire storm without goggles. I gave him my goggles, and he went back up and saved other people.
Yeah.
And the whole thing about how the woman comes to my dad's office.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And,
right.
Fake number and address, and we can't track that person down. And when I snuck into Beirut in the mid-90s, the joke was that, CIA was watching Warren Miller films. Like, what's going on here? And so, yeah, it's a strange twist, and I can't find Sasha.
Yeah.
I've had one guy come up to me at my office up north in New Hampshire. The guy had just come back from an expedition in Russia. He goes, I met a guide, and he said he only knew one American, Dan Egan. He said, you were the strongest guy he'd ever met. I was like, wow.
Damn.
And but he didn't have any Sasha's contacts.
Yeah.
And I've seen a guy on LinkedIn I thought was Sasha, but he didn't respond.
Yeah.
That's also like the common nickname, which I never knew until I went to Russia with Hat Trip, and all the guys are calling each other Sasha.
Yeah.
So I was like,
yeah, is it even a name?
Yeah. But had you noticed that he was around, like when you were in Moscow and stuff like that, or you didn't put it together until afterwards? Like, okay, this guy was actually. Now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, he was around the whole time.
He was around the group. He was in the back. He was lurking. He's a big guy.
Yeah.
I don't remember him in the refuge where we were acclimatizing. But he must have been somewhere near there.
Yeah.
And the other fact that all the other Russians were ethnic. They didn't have blue eyes. They didn't have blonde hair. He did. And then the real thing is that he found me in my snow cave.
That's crazy.
That he must have taken a head count in the other caves. The only thing I can imagine he did.
Yep.
And said, "Oh, one's missing," and he went out to find me.
And there was others that didn't make it, right, in their snow caves.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. My friend died he was alone like me in a snow cave. He died in his cave. And 11 died, but that's a conservative number because we can't prove the other number. But I always used a much bigger number. But for the book, we tried to be, we went back and we found all the old articles. There weren't many of them, but we found them in French and that sort of thing. And they confirmed. The biggest thing about the Elbrus disaster was, in my mind, you just, over time, you think you're crazy.
Yeah.
That's what trauma does, right? Because like nobody else experienced it. So I have nothing to bounce it off of.
Yeah.
Imagine it's been over 30 years. John and I have never talked about it.
Well, I was saying that to Eric earlier, like I have grown up around skiing and worked in the ski industry my entire professional career. And like, I'd never heard of it until you were on Powell's podcast and talked about it.
Yeah.
And then he had mentioned there's stuff in the book. So those of you guys who don't know what we're talking about, obviously you can read Dan's book. I assume it's all in there.
It's all in there.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, that must've been brushed under the rug.
Well, what happened, it's all about dollars.
Right.
So, the fact that no American died and the sponsor, Degree 7, threatened to pull all advertising if anybody wrote about it.
Okay.
So all of Ski Magazine, Powder, they were all threatened with loss of ads. And they dropped all the stories.
Got it.
The only story that was going to come out was the National Enquirer. And they wanted to do a story. But when they cut it because I didn't see a dead body.
Got it.
And so they were going to pay me. I wanted that thing to happen, but they pulled the story.
Yep.
And at one of my live shows, the sponsor showed up and sat in the front row, and I told the whole story, and people were gripped, but they walked out.
Really?
And canceled our contract.
Wow.
And so. Yeah, they did not want to be around it. And the other thing, Degree 7, Patrick Valençon is the godfather of extreme skiing. So he was passed. We were celebrating him on that trip.
Okay.
But they couldn't have a disaster tied with that, Pat Valençon. Yeah. So the Chamonix guides wanted it crushed. When I've been in Chamonix and young guides will search me out and go, "Hey, you were the guy on that trip. Tell me about what happened. Tell me about how the Chamonix guides were."
Right.
Because and they know the names of the Chamonix guides. They've heard the stories, but only from one angle.
Got it.
And so it has been this sort of, and that's why, I've carried it for 30 years.
I bet.
This is why I wrote about it and needed to get it out, because it's changed my life. The reason why I didn't tell it earlier in a book form was I didn't want that to be the end of my story. It's shaped my whole career. It's the beginning of my story.
Yeah.
And I wanted to more tell the story from the fact of what happens after a traumatic event. Because as you know, we've lost so many friends.
Yep.
JP and countless others and Shane. And this untreated trauma is vibrating through the industry in the extreme sports world.
Yep.
My next project, Dying to Ski, is a collective of all 30 plus people that we know that have died. And it's all told through the point of view of the wives, girlfriends, and kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an important story.
Yeah.
We're talking about Warren Miller. We're talking about skiing. We're talking about fun, family activities, things that change your life. You guys all work in the industry. We all work in the industry. This has been our lifestyle. So sport is designed to enhance our lives, not end it.
Right.
And here we have generations of kids, of which I'm part of, ending their lives through sport.
Yep.
Through this word, which people protect, progression. And that is killing people. I'm not anti-X Games. I'm not anti-triple flips, grabs, all the stuff that the Finn brothers did and all that stuff. I'm not anti that.
Jack.
But what I'm saying is, what are we doing when they get hurt?
Right.
We have the High Five Foundation, foundations for hurt athletes.
Right.
Is that the solution? Maybe. It's nice. It's great.
Yep.
They're friends of mine.
Yep.
But what are we doing prior to that? How are we educating, and what are we doing about the sport so that that's not happening? And at the same time, the age is getting younger.
Yep.
We all know it. Mm-hmm. It's no longer 16 in the X Games. It's 14.
Right.
So, and they're looking for contracts. Look, their career's over at 17, 18. Yeah.
Yep.
So what are we doing as a collective industry to continue to sell the generational ties of our sport? And I think part of that is healing through this project that I'm going to do, because we have trauma doctors and experts in the field addressing it. Look, if we were the NFL, we'd have a union.
Right.
We could claim concussions and all. We don't.
Yep.
So, Red Bull's only response is, and it's a good one, is to have an academy to educate, to train, and to make lifelong athletes. Well, that's good. I'm for that. But they know why.
Yep.
Why are they doing it? They know.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Well, that sounds like a really pretty sweet project.
Yeah, it's going to be intense.
Yeah, it's going to be really intense.
Yeah.
Especially because no one's really touched that at all.
Yeah, just in different places,
and putting it all together.
Yeah.
That's going to be pretty heavy.
It's going to be heavy. So
In a good way.
Yeah, in a good way.
Yeah.
You have to get through that stuff
Yeah.
with a message, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the message is just that. It's a generational sport. We need to do it. We don't judge. I don't judge Doug, Shane. I don't judge these guys. They were doing what I've made those things. I've made those decisions. I'm lucky. I'm alive.
Yep.
But I've been there. I'm not smarter. I might be lucky.
Mm-hmm.
But what do we take away from it? What do we think about the last trick of the day, the last run of the day? How do we approach it? Is it going to enhance my life? Maybe not. Mm-hmm. So, when I'm heli skiing, and I get it every year. Hey, I want to jump the cliff. Jump the cliff. You want a great moment or a great week? It's up to you, dude.
Well, I mean, it's funny because we just had that in Jackson.
Yeah.
It was the last day of the whole trip. We had a great trip.
Yeah.
We're in the backcountry. There's a
Wouldn't
huge,
happen if
there's
you
a
were
hu-
there, Dan.
There's a huge cliff, and it's like, is this going to enhance your life, Garrett, or is it going to make it worse?
Yeah.
No, it's going to enhance it. Oh well, now your foot's broken.
Send it.
And it wasn't huge. It was pretty small.
It was small.
But there's only one choice, right, Garrett?
Point them.
So when does that project launch or come out or?
Yeah, we're starting now.
Yeah.
I think we're a couple of years away. It's
Yep.
a big project.
Oh,
I
yeah.
have I've got all the athletes, and it's going to be a living memorial online where more people unfortunately will be added, but it plays for all the foundations.
Yep.
And people can hopefully help through those foundations. It's going to be a film plus a book plus the online piece. My current project, which is about racism in football, soccer.
Which is crazy. I'm a big soccer fan.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So the European racism,
It's out of hand.
it's like wild.
It's crazy.
It's wild. And it gets filtered by the time it gets to the U.S. because we're occupied with other sports here. I mean, soccer is obviously growing, and Leo Messi's coming. So
yeah,
it's
he's
gonna be
coming,
better.
dude. He's coming.
But I follow European soccer a
Nice.
lot. So it's like it's wild because you hear the stories and you read them all online, but like nobody here talks about it.
Right.
And it's because if any of those things happened here, like one of the event, it would be all over the television.
Yep.
But it just happened.
Again, yeah.
Did you hear about the tournament?
Mm-hmm.
So the West Ham team, somebody used the N-word, and they had to kick out the Dallas team, and the West Ham team went home. So we're interviewing Saka and the 3 players that missed the penalties.
Oh, Marcus Rashford?
Yeah, for the new project.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And the main story is Clyde Best, who is the first black superstar of the English First Division.
Yeah.
In the 70s. And through that, all the way to the missed PKs in 2020. So that's also a big story and a big important project.
Do you guys know about the missed PKs at the European Championships?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so it was England's in the final, and it goes to penalties, and 3 of their biggest stars in the whole country, they missed down the stretch. They missed the penalty kicks, and it was just like full-blown Twitter, Instagram, everything, like you name it, just racism attacked against those players because they missed the penalty kicks down the stretch to lose the European Championship.
Yeah, I mean, it was brutal too. Like that caused a whole social media blackout and all this. So, this idea that it's crazy racism, and we're here in Boston, so like we can't ignore it.
Yeah.
And most of us, we all grew up here, right? So, I grew up West Roxbury, South Boston, like Dorchester, like it's ingrained. And this is an important project. I'm really excited about it. And right after that, we're ready to go with Dying to Ski. So, these projects.
Those are 2 pretty heavy projects back to back.
Big projects,
That's awesome.
I mean, and, 30 years in White Haze, from the time the kid fired me, the intern, to the time of publishing, that was a 6-year journey.
Oh, wow.
Finally, Eric Wilbur got involved, and, the man, like he's an amazing writer and really put the whole project over the top. So Transforming the Beautiful Game will be out in another 12 to 18 months, and then we'll be into Dying to Ski.
Sweet.
Yeah. It's, these are our friends.
Yep.
So their stories are important to us and to the world, and they need to be honored in a way that, the hero's journey, the mythical journey, which we're all sort of on, when people do what they say they're going to do and pass, it's heroic. And that's mythical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so to put on that lens and take a look at our heroes that were brave enough to follow through with what they said they were going to do, regardless of the outcome, is going to be an amazing story.
It is. Well, Dan, thanks, man.
Hey, you guys
this is great.
Great. Love it.
This
Monster.
This has been great. Appreciate you coming through. And we covered a lot of good stuff today.
No, I appreciate you guys. This is great. We all got to go skiing.
Absolutely.
Heli trip, March 2nd through 9. You ready to go?
Yeah,
We're
let's
in.
go. Yep.
Okay.
Well,
you got your credit card?
you're gonna be hurt. So.
Well, we had a heli trip this year that was on the books, and kind of not really last minute, a couple of months in before we were supposed to go, there was an injury to one of the party, not Garrett, and so it got canceled. Not naming names, Ryan McBride ruined it.
Well, let's get on it.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Peace, y'all.
Later.